All right, let's go ahead and look at question number 5. It says if x squared plus 12x equals 13 and x itself is less than 0, what is the value of x squared? So we have a couple of steps here to look at. First of all, let's look at this equation. It says x squared plus 12x equals 13. This is not quite in standard form, so I'd like to start out by just putting this in a nice standard form. I'll do that by subtracting 13 from both sides of the equation. I've got x squared plus 12x minus 13 equals 0. Much better. All right, well, we're thinking about a quadratic equation. That means we have a couple of different choices for solutions. We could have a situation where we have just one solution. That's when the vertex is sitting on the x-axis. We could have a situation where the vertex is above or below the x-axis and we have two real solutions. Or there could also be a situation where there are no real solutions. This is when the parabola never actually crosses the x-axis in the coordinate plane. To find our x-intercepts, we have a couple of choices. We can factor this or put this in factored form, and from there we can read those factors out and find the x values that would make those factors 0, and that's one way that we'll solve this today. Another way to do this is to graph it on our graphing calculator, and we'll confirm our solutions using the graph today as well. So let's go ahead and think about two numbers that multiply to give a negative 13 and add to give a positive 12. And very quickly, we hopefully can come up with two factors. I think that if we were to multiply positive 13 and negative 1, we would in fact get that negative 13. If we were to add positive 13 and negative 1, they add to give positive 12. So this will be our two factors. Now when we put this in factored form, to find our x-intercepts, or our zeros or roots of our quadratic function, we want to ask ourselves what values of x will cause this entire equation to be true, or will equal 0. In this case, if x equals negative 13, the entire equation will equal 0, because negative 13 plus 13 equals 0, and 0 times anything will be 0. For the other factor, if x equals positive 1, 1 minus 1 is of course 0, and that will be the other x-intercept, or the other value of x that causes the equation to go to 0. So we found our two solutions here. X could equal negative 13 and x can equal 1. From our question, they are specifically interested in the x value that is less than 0. So our root, or our x-intercept of interest, is actually this negative 13. So I'm going to put a little box around it so we don't forget about it. Now, supposing that we weren't quite sure how to factor this, we can also solve this using our graphing calculator. So to show that, I'm going to go ahead and put our standard form equation into our graphing calculator. We'll go over to y equals, and we'll put in x squared plus 12x minus 13, and hit graph. Now, it's possible that when you graph this, you're not able to see this function because this is outside of the standard window. So you may need to go to Zoom and choose choice 3, Zoom out. Since I'm already very zoomed out, you would hit enter here, and you'll take a look at the graph. And when you hit enter again, it will zoom you out. From here, we should be able to get a pretty good look at these x-intercepts. Now, we can trace these values exactly. If we use our cursor going to the left, we can get an approximate value, but it won't be exact because the cursor is not set up to give us an exact answer. To find the exact x-intercept, we can see it's near this negative 13, and we know algebraically that it is exactly negative 13, but let's calculate it exactly on the calculator. We'll hit second, trace. And we're going to choose choice number 2, 0, and hit enter. It's going to give us a couple of choices here. It wants a left boundary, and it will ask for a right boundary as well. I always like to start with the left x-intercept. It's just habit for me. So I'm going to move my cursor until my cursor is to the left of the left x-intercept. So it's located just over here. And hit enter. We've set up our little field goal posts. It's now asking for a right boundary, so I'm going to move my cursor until it's to the right of that x-intercept. Hit enter. Now I've got these little boundaries, and I'm going to bring the cursor as close as I can to the x-intercept and hit enter, and it will solve exactly that x equals negative 13 and y will equal 0. And this confirms what we found algebraically. We can go through this process again to find the right side of the parabola, the right side x-intercept. So let's do that. Second, trace. Choice 2 for the 0. This time we're going to have to move our cursor over to the right-hand side of the parabola. We want to make sure that the cursor stays on the left side of this x-intercept, so we'll leave it right here. Hit enter. Bring it up just a little bit past that x-intercept so it's on the right-hand side. Hit enter. Bring it as close as we can for the guess. Hit enter one more time. And our last x-intercept is located at x equals 1, y equals 0, and this confirms what we found algebraically. Now, going back to our question, we were only interested this time in the x value that was less than 0, so we're interested specifically in this negative 13. Now, it would like to know what the value of x squared would be. So to solve this, we're just going to find negative 13 squared. Now be very careful when you're thinking about this. Keep in mind that this is referring to negative 13 multiplied by itself. So this will be negative 13 times negative 13. So this will be the positive answer, 169. Okay? And that'll be our final answer for this one. When we are thinking about the x value that is less than 0, the value of x squared for this function is 169. Final answer.